Hello and welcome to this CIO webcast brought to you in association with Boxever. I'm Doug Drinkwater, contributing editor at CIO, and today we're going to be speaking about how CIOs become customer-centric, and especially how that happens through the advance of AI and data analytics. Today I'm going to be speaking with Murrell, who's Director of Partnerships at Boxever, and we're going to be speaking about the CIO's role, how they influence those customer journeys, and also how they maximise data for more personalised customer experience.
Hey, good to see you.
So Paul, thanks for joining us today. And today we're going to be speaking about how the CIOs become customer-centric, or at the heart of that customer transformation. In your eyes then, how customer-centric are CIOs today? How closely aligned are they to those customer objectives for the business?
I think, to be fair to them, they always have been. I think especially those that are operating within B2C organisations. I just think there's been such a revolution in how customers interact with brands over the last 10 years that the demands on the CIO and their team has increased exponentially. You know, if you think about the channels with which customers are interacting, the frequency with which they're doing it, and that goes across the business, you know, even from customers making purchases, to servicing those purchases, to when things go wrong, you know, communicating across first-party and third-party channels. It's a really, really difficult environment for a CIO and their team to be operating within today. I think another consideration is the data, and remaining compliant within all the different jurisdictions that an organisation operates within, and also being seen as a trusted custodian of that data in the eyes of the customers themselves. You know, we all know the damage that can be done when there are breaches to that customer data, and we all know that the large fines that regulators can impose upon organisations that don't quite get it right. So I think all this means that the CIOs of today absolutely have to be customer-centric.
So obviously they're not doing that on their own. The CIO is collaborating with various heads of the organisation. I mean, who inside that company should they be collaborating with typically?
Mm-hmm. I think, for me, I see the main drivers of change as being the Chief Customer Officer and the Chief Marketing Officer. But I think, you know, they're the guys that are innovating within the customer experience domain. I think also they're always doing it with one view on the revenue target of the Chief Commercial Officer. But I think all these guys they're working hand in hand with the CIOs and their teams, because all the change that they want to achieve, so much of it is reliant on effective deployment of technology and data.
So we've spoken about the who, if you like. In terms of the how should these CIOs be collaborating with these various stakeholders to truly drive a better customer experience in the organisation?
Mm-hmm. I think for me, it's around all coming together behind a shared vision. You know, so and really getting to the heart of how an organisation wants to change and evolve, okay, and getting all parties lined up behind that. Then I think it's about agreeing what the core building blocks that need to be in place are. So is it a data lake? Is it a single customer view? Is it a common set of APIs that expose that data? Or actually is kind of channel orchestration the thing that's missing? So I think once you've got that enterprise architecture in place, then actually innovating the customer experience off the back of it is, you know, relatively straightforward. You know, I always think how great it could be if, you know, the business teams can have a fantastic idea in the morning and have it live, you know, that same evening, rather than having a great idea in the morning and then having to go away and develop a business case to get a new IT project off the ground. But I also think there's a great opportunity for innovation to come from within the CIO's team themselves, almost bottom-up innovation, if you like, because those are the teams they're very much the ones observing what the new product changes are, what the new SDKs or the new APIs that are available. And actually these guys they're really smart, and increasingly they're thinking customer first. So they're the ones putting two and two together and thinking, actually, how can we exploit that new capability for the good of the customer. So I've seen some great examples whereby, the CIO and their team are bringing ideas to their business colleagues, and they're very much working together to innovate on the customer experience.
That's really interesting, actually, because it's almost moved away from the idea line of business goes to IT, and the IT is as a function which just serves, if you like, to actually IT enabling a lot of this stuff, right? It becomes the idea of new business innovation, new business opportunity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I saw a great example a few years ago when an organisation I was working in, it was a couple of members of the IT team that watched the Steve Jobs keynote when he introduced how third-party apps were going to be coming onto the App Store. And those guys looked at that. They kind of looked at the APIs and the web services that the organisation had in place and kind of put two and two together and thought, actually, we can build an app really quite quickly. And they did. They took the idea to the business colleagues who endorsed it. They worked together. And that organisation was the first of its kind to have an app in the App Store at go live. And the organisation got huge credit for doing that. But fundamentally, it came off the back of those IT guys seeing that keynote and understanding how they could exploit that new capability that Apple were bringing to market.
So Paul, obviously speaking about maximising the user data for that customer experience, to personalise the customer experience, and yet at the same time we know that CIOs are fighting these huge data silos across the organisation, across different geographies. In your experience, how do they start to fight back against those data silos and really start to make sure the data is working for a company in terms of improving the customer experience?
Yeah. I think fundamentally, start with the change that you want to bring about and not the data itself. I spoke to one organisation at 2 points in time, about 5 years apart. And in that period, they built a fantastic single customer view. They brought that data together. It was a great blend of first, second and third party data. It had integrity, it had quality. But crucially, they weren't able to demonstrate any meaningful business benefit off the back of it. It wasn't connected to the customer experience systems, and the business team had, little or no visibility of it even. So you could debate actually whether that was the right use of resources during that period, because their competitors certainly hadn't been navel-gazing at the data for that period of time, and certainly the markets that they operated in had certainly moved on during that period as well. So whilst breaking down those silos, I think is really, really important, what you have to do is focus on the change and the data that you need to bring about that change, okay? Not spending all the time bringing all the data together. Because a lot of the use cases that you want to bring about don't need all the data. They just need the right data. So I think for the CIO, really focusing their team on identifying and exploiting the data that's going to make a difference, I think is really, really important. A similar point that comes up quite frequently is around data latency and the need for real-time data. And again, not all use cases need all the data to be there in real time. For me, the real-time data that is crucial is that from the current customer interaction. So really trying to understand the current customer context and bring that into the decision-making process. I think that is the real-time data that you should focus on. And that's where the real value is going to be.
Now, obviously, at the heart of a lot of this is kind of data scientists and data science teams, and yet we know there's a huge shortage in that particular market. Not to mention, of course, that we see Facebook and Google quickly, gathering that talent as soon as it becomes available. Yeah. In your mind, how are organisations truly leveraging the power of those data science teams at the moment? Yeah,
sure. I think there's a couple of points to make here. I think firstly, there's some really smart people building some incredibly sophisticated models. My observation is they're just not being exploited as much as they could be. So for example, the data science team might build a model to drive, maybe it's an outbound email campaign, make product recommendations, for example. That same model could equally be put to use on the website or the mobile app, or even in the contact centre when customers call in. What's often missing for me is that data engineering. It's that ability to connect the model to the channels, okay? And that's what's often missing within an organisation. I think secondly, you made reference to it in your question there, the ability to recruit and retain people with these skills, I think, is becoming increasingly difficult for organisations. So for me, I think the best operating model that I've observed is where companies find the right partners who are able to get access to the very latest tools and techniques and use them to complement the in-house team. I think that I've seen that work really, really well. And I think the third point there is, there's a piece of advice that I was given a few years ago, which is the biggest gain to be had is moving from no model to a model, not necessarily from a model to a fully optimized model. It's in their nature for a data scientist to want to build the very best model, the most optimized model. But that takes time, and quite frankly, it probably isn't the best use of resources. So getting the CIO, again, to focus the teams on delivering value, I think is really, really important.
Now, you believe there's a certain technique that can help here. Can you talk to us a little bit about the power of decisioning and essentially why you should care? What does it enable you as an organisation to do?
Sure. So decisioning is a technique. It brings together predictive analytics with data and business rules, and it allows an organisation to be joined up, personalised, and deliver really relevant communications across all inbound and outbound channels. We often refer to it as next best action or next best offer. Fundamentally what you're trying to do is make smart decisions about what to talk to a customer about at any given point in time on any particular channel. And marketeers have been working with technology and data for some time. But we think there's real value in decisioning and taking that next step in joining up the customer experience.
And as a CIO and as an organisation, what does it truly enable you to do? What's the power of it, if you like?
So it enables organisations to be relevant and contextual in each and every customer interaction. And it also allows them to be cognizant of the current customer context and also, crucially, the current business context. So what do I mean by that? So let's say, for example, a customer has been browsing the website whilst they're on hold trying to talk to a customer service agent. Well, what we should be doing is taking that intent data from the web. We should be making it available to the contact centre agent alongside the predictive analytics to allow them to have a much more familiar, relevant conversation when they answer the phone to that customer. Similarly, if that customer has recently suffered a service failure or a service outage maybe, then what we should be doing is talking to the customer maybe about a more brand engagement message, or we should be giving them an update on their service failure rather than selling to them. So maybe those selling offers should be suppressed at that point in time. So all we're trying to do is we're trying to use the data, we're trying to use the predictive analytics, but we're trying to wrap it up into a safe environment where we can have a really contextual, relevant and one-to-one dialogue with a customer at any given point in time.
So this is about smarter customer interactions. How do you get started? How should you move on the road, if you like, to implementing this within your organisation?
I'm conscious that the term think big, start small is quite overused at the moment. But I think in this context, actually it can be really, really useful. So, the thought of implementing a centralised decisioning engine connected to all the inbound and outbound channels, for a CIO and their colleagues can be incredibly intimidating. But actually, if you focus on perhaps one channel or perhaps trying to solve one particular problem, breaking it down, it becomes a lot less intimidating. And actually initiating a proof of concept or a proof of value, because for me, nothing builds advocacy for a big change program better than being able to show positive results that have been signed off by finance that allow you to get the go-ahead to initiate that big change program.
Now, I want to talk about two buzzwords to artificial intelligence and machine learning, both of which we've really seen being pushed forward as being able to advance this vision, if you like, of personalising the customer experience. How are you seeing those technologies at the moment really driving better customer experiences today?
So whilst the techniques have been around for many, many years, I think we're only really at the start of using those same techniques to really make a difference to the customer experience. So I think whilst we're really comfortable in in using algorithms to make product recommendations or what to watch next recommendations, for example. Use cases where there's very little risk associated to it if we don't quite get things right. I think where there are nuances or where we're really trying to drive a personalised and genuinely one-to-one conversation, I think there's a reluctance to hand over decision-making to those black box algorithms. So I think there, and in those situations, it's really beneficial if we bring those predictive analytics together with the data and the business rules into a decisioning platform that really allows you to kind of manipulate and really deliver that one-to-one customer experience.
So Paul, we're coming towards the end, and it's always good to finish with some takeaways, some tangible advice for the CIOs that are watching today. What would your kind of final tips be so when they go back into the office? What should they be looking at doing and going forward?
Okay. I think something we've touched on is really getting that business objective agreed and signed off at the leadership team level and get that communicated down to all the teams. Making sure that teams they understand what the vision is for an organisation and make sure that all the resources are pointing in the same direction, trying to solve that business problem. I think secondly, identifying what are the building blocks that need to be in place to enable that rapid innovation of the customer experience. And then I think thirdly, something that's really important these days is for the CIO and their team to help their colleagues navigate, the myriad of tools and systems and acronyms that are floating around in that vendor landscape. There's a really famous infographic for the marketing technology or MarTech landscape. And this year's infographic has 7,000 logos on it. These are all the players in and around that space. That was at 1,000 just back in 2014. So I think now more so than ever, the CIO and their team can really help their business colleagues plot their path through that, understand which of those systems can integrate into the current IT estate and can really do a job in delivering on that customer experience innovation that the business teams want to bring about.
Now, finally, you spoke about vendors. Obviously, you're here with Boxever. Can you talk a bit more about how Boxever can help? And ultimately, if you want to find out more information, where you should go for that?
Sure. So Boxever is a personalisation platform. We have a decisioning engine that uses data and AI to make every customer interaction smarter. We've got a great website at boxever.com. You can go there and find out in a lot more detail about what the platform does and how it does it. You can get a good take on the results that we deliver for our customers in the form of use cases. And we've got some really great information on the different industries and how we solve different business problems in different industries. For those people that want to learn a bit more about what we've been talking about today, there's a really good ebook, which is, I think, the 4 steps to personalisation. And for those that want a bit more detail, there's a beginner's guide to decisioning on there, which goes into a lot more of the detail that I've only scratched the surface of today. You can request a demo from the website as well, and I'm happy for people to reach out to me via LinkedIn and happy to have a conversation.
Paul, thank you so much for your time today. It's been great chatting with you, and thanks for coming along.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Doug.
And thanks to you, the viewers, for tuning in. For more information around today's topics, you can head to cio.co.uk or, as Paul says, boxever.com. For CIO, I'm Doug Drinkwater. Thanks and goodbye.